Hello and welcome into another episode of Friar Territory here on the Foul Territory Network. I'm your host, Kyle Glaser, alongside three-time Padres All-Star closer Heath Bell. Heath, we are exactly 1 week away from opening day. Do you feel the excitement? You feel the energy? You feel the tingles? Baseball's in the air. We're almost there.
I'm pretty excited. It's a little bit hard, watching the Cubs and Dodgers watch over, I guess overseas, I guess you would say. But baseball's excited. I'm kind of like, why didn't the Padres go out there? But we did it last year. So, yeah, it's exciting. It's a little hectic to see how the lineup's going to go up, and then hearing a little bit about you, Darvish. So, but otherwise, really excited. Really excited. Where I might sneak on opening day somewhere. You never know, or at least I always joke around and go, hey, I don't go to opening day. I go to the second game of the season because it's easier tickets. The hoopla's all over. You got crazy people, but then you can just start enjoying baseball. So, yeah, that's kind of my opening day.
Yeah, absolutely. Opening day for my money is the best day of the year. I'll be down in San Diego covering Padres opening day, as I have pretty much every year since 2015 when I first jumped on the beat. And then even during my years at Baseball America, I always prioritize going out to Petco Park for opening day just because for my money, I think that's the best one, more than Dodger Stadium, Angel Stadium. There's just an extra beauty about it. So Padres and Braves, exactly 1 week from today, kick off the 2025 season. Heath, with that, since we are 1 week away from opening day, wanted to do a projection. As we know, the Padres have most of their roster spots relatively set on the position player side, filling out the bench, who's going to be the DH. That's something that has worked its way out through spring training. And perhaps most importantly, there's now some uncertainty in the rotation. Yu Darvish was shut down with elbow inflammation. We will see exactly what the timeline is. We're still waiting on more information to see how long he'll be out, if he'll be ready for opening day. But the assumption at this point is just given when in the calendar this happened, it seems like opening day is a question mark. That's on top of Matt Waldron, who was in competition for the number 5 starter spot. And I think you could argue at one point maybe had the edge just because he had given the Padres a really good half season last year before struggling down the stretch. He suffered an oblique strain. So the Padres starting pitching depth was not great to begin with. They were about 7 deep if you were being generous. And potentially they're already down 2 on opening day. So really down to 5 healthy pitchers who have significant-ish starting experience in the major leagues. Just real quick before we dive into our opening day roster projection, your thoughts on the news when you heard, Yu Darvish had elbow inflammation and his status for opening day is in question.
Well, when I heard it, I was like, oh, geez. First of all, don't think he's going to make opening day. I think they need to rest him because you'd rather have you Darvish midseason and at the end of the year. Just because he's had some elbow injuries or at least inflammation and stuff like that to me is not really an injury, but it's kind of a precautionary thing like, hey, what's going on, this and that. It could lead into something where his age is up there, and I'm just worried about is he going to be I'm not worried about like him missing the first month of the season because I'm still think if you pitch, 5 months, not 6 months out of the season, then it's more like you pretty much were there the whole year. I'm just worried that he's not going to be there. I'm worried that we're going to get maybe a couple starts, maybe 2 months out of the whole 6-month season with him. I would like him to pitch, 4 or 5 months. If he misses a couple weeks, especially early on, that's perfectly fine. Older guys don't recover as fast. So maybe we need the offseason need to be a little bit longer or whatnot. It's never going to be like that. But I'm just trying to go, everybody's arm's a little bit different. So I'm a little worried about that having there, but I'm excited that if we can have the other young starters that we have, because Yu Darvish, he's up there in age. I know he's signed for a few years, but he's not going to be the next generation of the Padres guys. So I'm excited that there's not going to be, Darvish is like 50%, but, he'll make opening day, and then we got to push somebody to the bullpen, and I'm not a big fan of the bullpen. Starters go to the bullpen, and then go back to starting. I just feel like if you're a starter, you should go to AAA, start, and when we need you to come back up. So, I'm not totally upset about that, but I'm a little worried. I'm worried that Yu Darvish's elbow is going to turn into something midseason to the All-Star break where his elbow is inflamed, where he can't pitch anymore? And do we even get him for a playoff race?
Yeah, I think the biggest concern, as you mentioned, is he's 38 years old, and it's not like this is the first time he's had elbow issues. In 2023, he was shut down at the end of the season with a stress reaction in his right elbow. Last year, there were a number of things. He had a personal issue that took him away from the team for a while. But among other things, he did have some elbow soreness last year as well, in addition to his hip and his neck. So this is now the third year in a row where the elbow has cropped up as a problem. He made 16 starts to the Padres last year. And again, not all that was the elbow. He had to take some time away, but 16 starts last year, 24 the year before. So, he's missed more or less anywhere from a quarter to a half of his starts each of the last 2 years. And now you move into the third year in a row. When he's healthy, he can still pitch at a very, very high level. We have seen that. But the health does start to become concerning. And you mentioned as well wanting to make sure that he's ready to potentially pitch for the majority of the season. You don't want to rush him back for opening day. It's not just this season. The Padres still owe Yu Darvish 4 years and $67 million on his contract. The amount of money he's paid each of the next few years does start to decrease after this year. Nonetheless, he signed for 4 more years, including the season, $67 million. It's a big expenditure. You want him to be as healthy and productive for as much of that as possible. We have seen some frontline starters, still be good into their 40s. Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, for example. But just with the injuries, you want to be cautious.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if Yu Darvish keeps being injured, then are we just getting him for half a season? And his contract's going to look bad in a few years if we don't get him for a 3/4 of a season. So it's going to be interesting because, like you said, the last couple of years we've got him for maybe half of the year. Well, where do you put him? Does he? Here's the thing: Yu Darvish is not that guy. Do you stick to the bullpen and then use your start? But it's almost like he's older now. We need to have him in the bullpen to throw an inning here, an inning there, and then 2 weeks later start. But we're probably going to use the injured list. So it's interesting because like you said, he's a dominant pitcher when he's pitching, but how much are we going to get for him? Are we just going to get 3 months out of the year? I really think we need to have, 4.5 months for him, or have him be that guy where you set up the rotation. They do this a lot with the young guys. You're going to start this week and then there's going to be an off day. So you can miss a start. And so you'll pitch like once every 10 days to keep your innings down. Are we going to have to do that with him because, we're worried about his arm and his, age-wise? So it's just going to be interesting because I know he's not going to want to do that. He's going to want to pitch every 5th day. He's a gamer, but we might have to start thinking about doing something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if it'd be once every 10 days, but we see sometimes you build in that extra off day. So, Again, maybe he's pitching with an extra day of rest. And again, we'll see. I think right now the most important thing is just seeing what exactly the seriousness of his elbow inflammation is. We're still waiting on that, and that will provide some clarity. Heath, with that, I do want to jump into this roster projection because the news about Yu Darvish and Matt Waldron as well does affect what the opening day roster might look like. And again, before we dive into this, keep in mind we still have another week before the season starts. So a lot of things can happen. Other injuries could crop up. So keep in mind, this is a roster projection as of today. This could very well change as, if someone else gets hurt here the final days of camp. So Heath, let's dive in. I want to start first and foremost with this rotation that we've talked about, just because now that Darvish is out, potentially, now that Waldron is out, potentially for opening day, look, Michael King, who was named the opening day starter, obviously will be in there. Dylan Cease, Nick Pivetta, filling out the back 2 spots in this rotation. Kyle Hart and Randy Vazquez, to me, are the 2 guys that make the most sense, just because those are the guys that have starting experience. Kyle Hart was the winner of the Korean equivalent of the Cy Young Award last year. He hasn't pitched a ton in spring training, but when he's pitched well. And Randy Vazquez, again, has starting experience both, with the Padres and the Yankees. He really struggled the first half of last year, but the second half, from late June through the end of the season, he was okay. His ERA was in the low 4s. Some of the peripherals were better. So at the end of the day, these are the guys who have starting experience. Stephen Kolek is a Rule 5 pick who has never started in the majors before. I know the Padres are talking about stretching him out. You have some other guys, they signed Wes Benjamin, but realistically, to me, this is what the opening day rotation should look like: King, Cease, Pivetta, Hart, Vazquez, assuming that Darvish and Waldron go on the IL.
Yeah, so I'm going to go prediction real quick. I think Darvish is going to probably be out for about a month. I'm kind of curious why they haven't used Kyle Hart in spring training more, but I think he's going to be so Hart and Randy Vazquez, I think, are your typical 4 or 5 starters. You're going to have hopefully a mid-4 ERA. Basically, all the guys know that I'm going to keep you in the ball game. I'm going to throw about 6 innings, maybe 7 on a good day, give up 3 or 4 runs, and we got to score some runs. We got to help them out for offense-wise. I think Nick's going to do really well, and then Cease and King, are going to be your horses. So it's, everybody wants your 5 starters to be basically like the Dodgers. Every single one of them is an ace. Where let's go back to the typical. You got your number 1, you got your number 2, your number 3 is a potential where, say your number 1 is your ace. Number 2, maybe let's just say Cease, number 1 is King. And then number 2 can be kind of like your ace occasionally here and there. And your number 3 is kind of like, he's not an ace, but he's a really solid pitcher and he has really good outings, but occasionally, is not consistent. He might put 3 or 4 great outings together and then blow up a game. And then your 4 and 5 guys just want to keep you in the game. That's all you want. And the bullpen understands that. And that's where you have your long guy go, hey, your 4th starter and your 5th starter, hey, I might be pitching today because, if they don't have it, I got to come in and eat up, let's say Hart goes 2 or 3 innings. I got to go eat 2 or 3 innings to get it to our bullpen. And the offense, the funny part is the offense understands that too. And baseball's a really weird thing because when you have your ace going out there like Musgrove or Darvish or even King or Cease, the offense will score like 1 or 2 runs because that they're going to go out there and dominate.
Yep. But
then when you have your 4th guy or your 5th guy out there that's got like a mid-4 ERA or even like a low 5, your offense decides to score like 8 or 9 runs. And funny because back in my day when Jake Peavy was pitching, we would score like 2 runs, 1 or 2 runs, because we knew he was just going to be lights out. Chris Young was the same way. But then when we had David Wells or Greg Maddux at the end of his career, they were going to, their ERA was in the 3s, 4s. Our offense would go off. And even Peavy and Chris Young were even talking about, man, why can I not get like 5 or 6 runs when I pitch? And it's just something psychologically with the hitters of, hey, all we need to do is get 1 or 2 runs because our horse is up there. We got this. Where I don't know, you see more pitches or something like that. I mean, I've even asked hitters and they just go, I have no idea. I understand what you're saying. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we've seen that with Jacob deGrom in particular with the Mets. That happened to him all the time. He'd go out and give him, 7, 8, 9 dominant innings, and the Mets wouldn't score for him. And
then you lose 1-0.
Yeah.
It was like, well, geez, what's going on? So yeah. I just think, our offense is better than that and back in the day and this and that, but it's just funny psychologically. I feel like all the fans, we want, if we had Musgrove and we had Darvish healthy, then look at our starting rotation. You're like, you almost got, 4, potentially 5 number 1, number 2 guys, every single one, and that's what you love to see, but realistically it's not going to happen. So you just have to go out there and you got to take it for what it's worth. And, like Hart and Vazquez just have to sit there and go, hey, look, my job is to keep us in the game and give us the chance to win. If I don't get my wins, that's great. As long as the team wins, that's what goes on. I just got to keep us in the game. I need to try to get to 5 innings to, make my bullpen not overworked. But that's where King and Cease come in, and even Nick, where it's, say the bullpen has been overworked 2 or 3 games in a row. It's like, hey, man, I got to pick it up. I got to go 7 innings today. I got to help the bullpen out to give them a day off. So if the team works together and they're all colliding like that, I don't mind this rotation. I kind of like it. Like I said, are a little down. There's not the competition. Matt is oblique. That's probably going to be 2 or 3 weeks. That's why I always said, hey, man, you got to have a little fat because you can't pull fat. So I never pulled oblique because I had a lot of oblique. Anyway, it's just one of those things that I think it'll be okay. I think Matt will probably be out, miss maybe a week or 2. Darvish, I think, is going to miss 3 to 4 weeks. That's my prediction. I don't know, but that's just my prediction because you don't want to rush. It's early.
Yeah.
these guys get some starts under them. Let's see how Hart does. Going from Korea to over here. We know he can pitch, but can you do it here? Vazquez, let's see. Are you going to be a little shaky, or are you just going to be the good pitcher we know you can be? So, let's not rush into anything. That's why I hope the Padres are going to do this year. But I like our starting five right now. That means, here's the thing. Our starting five right now, if we're starting here, then we have Yu Darvish, and we know what Yu Darvish can do. And then we have Matt, and Matt did really well last year. They can jump in for two guys that fall off, or, I don't know what they're going to do with them, to be honest with you, because I don't know everybody's option. And I'm one of the worst guys to go, hey, put a starter in the bullpen. I think he should go to AAA until we need him, just because he stays on the rotation. I mean, starters are starters and relievers are relievers. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, again, I think it is valuable to have one swingman in there. But again, like you said, we'll see. Right now, this is the opening day roster projection. Just to hit on Kyle Hart, part of the reason we haven't seen a ton of him in spring training is he was hit with the flu early. So that kind of delayed him getting started. And then his first outing against the Brewers, he actually pitched well, but got rained out. So it wasn't an official game. So the performance doesn't show up on the stats. But he did pitch. So it has been limited, but he's been effective. And I think just by virtue of the options they have, realistically, this is probably going to be their opening day rotation. Heath, I want to move into the bullpen because you have more or less 6 of the 8 bullpen spots pretty much locked up. Robert Suarez is going to close. Jason Adam, Jeremiah Estrada, Adrian Morejon are going to be right there. Your 6, 7, 8, 8th inning guys. Yuki Matsui, who signed, a big league deal, struggled with his control last year. We'll see if he can adjust year in year 2. Wandy Peralta is a veteran again, who's on a big league contract. So those 6 are going to be in there. It really leaves 2 bullpen spots. Brian Hoeing would have one of these, but he's down with shoulder soreness. Johnny Brito would be someone else who'd be in contention, but he is also nursing some forearm discomfort. You also have Sean Reynolds, who we saw last year make his big league debut, position player, convert, has a stress reaction in his foot. So under normal circumstances, Hoeing would certainly have one of these other spots that are available, potentially Brito as well. With those 2 out, though, my opening day roster projection right now, I have Alec Jacob and Stephen Kolek. Again, Kolek serving kind of that swingman role. We saw him pitch in relief for the Padres last year as a Rule 5 pick for the Mariners. Wasn't great. ERA was over 5, but it's a big jump anytime you're a Rule 5 guy and you have to stay on the big league roster. You can't go down to the minors to work on things. I think right now he makes the most sense as sort of a length option. And Alec Jacob has pitched well at times. He's had some injuries, but again, it's just funky. It's that low sidearm, upper 80s, but guys just don't see it and don't hit it that well. To me, these are the 2 guys that make the most sense to fill out the bullpen, just given Hoeing and Brito and Reynolds all likely opening on the IL.
It looks really good. I like Alex. I like his funky delivery. He's going to be that guy with options that are going to probably go up and down. Matsui, I'm kind of looking for him to come back and start, having his control a lot better and be the pitcher that we know we were hoping that he could be. And I think he could turn into, a 6th, 7th inning guy, maybe even a setup guy. So, and then, was it Cole? How do you pronounce his name?
Stephen Kolek.
So Kolek, it makes sense for him to be the swing guy. The swing guy usually is the guy that could start but doesn't particularly do well starting. You have him in the bullpen, but here's the Rule 5. He's not Rule 5 anymore, is he?
No, that was last year. So this year he is a guy that they can send up, send down, and that's valuable.
So I could see him. That you have to understand that nobody likes going up and down. I mean, one year I went up and down 11 times with the Mets, and nobody likes doing that. But really, as you get older and start identifying yourself in the big leagues, you always need that one guy that's going to be okay to go up and down. It's just the way it is where, like say when Yu Darvish comes back and let's just say, Hart's pitching really well or, Vazquez is doing really well. So it's just one of them's got to go to the bullpen because they're on a big league contract. If you can't they don't have options to go sent down. So it's just, you got to understand the situation. Just like, on position players, sometimes you need a bench guy with options, especially if one of your guys is hurt. It's just a position wise where if you do your job and you come to the big leagues and do what you need to do, then you go down the minor leagues, do what you need to do. Because if you're a big league guy, this is what I learned. If you were a big league guy and you believe that you're a big league guy, but you got sent down to the minor leagues, you should go down to the minor leagues and dominate. You could have a bad game here and there, but you pretty much dominate. There's a difference between you and the minor league guys. That what they did as a big league team just doesn't have a room for you. But when somebody gets hurt, you get called up, and eventually you're going to be the guy that's going to stay there for long term. But that's just it's a process. Nobody likes getting called to the big leagues. And Jack DeMero, almost rookie of the year and all that. I think he should have. But it's one of those things that he could potentially go down this season, to AAA to work on things. Is that going to happen? No, but it's just one of those things that everybody likes getting to the big leagues and then staying there. But sometimes, especially in the pitching department, you have to move guys around. Bullpen, you got to move guys around. And trust me, I didn't like it when it first happened to me, but then I kind of understood the situation that, hey, I'm just that guy. And eventually there'll be another guy. And then I think my second or third year with the Mets, I realized there was another guy, and he kind of went down a little bit more. And occasionally I did too, but it happens that way. And then when I got traded over to San Diego, you kind of understood. I started out our 6-inning guy and then moved our way up. But we had one guy in the bullpen that was just that way. He was that guy that go down if we needed an extra bat or whatnot, or if we needed an extra pitcher, but he was our guy. He would go to AAA and dominate and come back up. And the great thing about AAA is if you go down and do what you have to do, like say if you're a bullpen guy, but you need your innings because, you get sent down because, hey, you're probably going to be a starter. They can start you and go, hey, we're going to start you, but you're going to go 3 innings every 4 days. They can pretty much do what they want down there. And you just have to get people out and do what you have to do. And then when you get called up, then you get thrown in the swing. Maybe you start starting, maybe you start relieving, this and that. The cool part about going down the minors, especially if you're a respectable player and you're trying to say it the nicest way, where if you're just a guy that we're going to work really hard and you talk to the guys and you trust, I'm talking to the coaches. You can tell the coaches like, hey, can I come down here? I'm used in the bullpen more. So can I come in with like a guy on this happened to me once. They wanted me to stretch me out with the Mets. So they sent me down and they're like, you're going to start. You're going to start on Monday, then you're going to start on Thursday to get 3 innings each, and then you're going to come back up next week or something like that. And I was like, all right, this is my only 2 starts in the minor leagues. But the funny part is I started and I was like, the first game I was exhausted. And then I was talking to the coach and I go, hey, next time I start on Thursday, can I just warm up when, we're on the road, when we go out to hit? And he's like, you don't want to throw? I'm like, I never throw long toss. I never go to the outfield and pretend like I'm a starter. I'm just getting more innings for a relieving position. I'm not going to starting. And he was like, yeah, as long as you're ready. So I went up to the bullpen, and it was funny because the starting catcher didn't even go with me. I just told him, say, if you want to come out there, you can, but our starting catcher in AAA batted like third. So I just went out there and warmed up as a reliever and just came in the first inning, jogged out from the outfield instead of the dugout, make it more realistic for me and kind of help me out. So I just said, if you embrace your role, you're not always going to be that way. You can be established big league guy, but you have to embrace that role right now. That I think some of the guys will. And, it's going to be interesting to see. We got a week left of spring training. And my biggest thing for this week is, are we going to start winning some games, or at least having, the lead towards the last 2 or 3 innings? Because if we don't have our main closers out there, I get that. That's fine. Different schedules and all that. But, that's my take, because we need to start winning games. I know, trust me, in spring training, the Yankees in my day were always the team to beat. And in spring training, they were horrible back in the day. Last week, they always started putting their players out there, and they started winning games to kind of get the momentum going again. And that's kind of what I think the Padres need to do this past week. And then, the roster will fill itself out. So there's some injuries. There's a little soreness. They'll fill itself out in the next 5 or 6 days. It really will.
Yeah, and you mentioned the options. It's important, right? As soon as you Darvish and Matt Waldron come back, hopefully sooner rather than later, particularly in the case of Darvish, Stephen Kolek has all of his options still remaining. He's someone that they can send down. If Randy Vasquez struggles, he has an option remaining. Some of these bullpenners again, Alec Jacob has two options remaining as well if they want to move some guys around. So there is that ability to move guys up and down out of the rotation and the bullpen. They do have that flexibility, which is so key just in terms of guys who gets hurt, guys coming off, guys underperforming. Having the ability to make moves and not feeling stuck it is very important, particularly when it comes to the bullpen. So the Padres do have that flexibility with some of those guys. We'll see again. Also, whenever Brian Hoeing is able to go, he'll be in the bullpen as well. So the Padres do have options, no question. Heath, I want to move over to the position player side now because for the most part, the 8 position players that will be on the field are more or less set. The question has been who will be the DH and then who will fill out the bench. So realistically, it's 5 spots and you're trying to figure out what that's going to look like. The DH and 4 bench spots, one of them is going to go the backup catcher. I think right now, just looking through it again, the 8 position players, who they're going to be opening day roster projection. We have Elias Diaz catcher, Luis Arias first base, Jake Cronenworth second base, Manny Machado third base, Xander Bogaerts at short, Jason Heyward in left, Jackson Merrill in center, Fernando Tatis Jr. in right. In terms of the DH and the bench spots, the projection here is Gavin Sheets will be the opening day DH. Luis Camposano will be the backup catcher over Martin Maldonado. Connor Joe, who signed a big league deal, will more or less be platooning with Jason Heyward. So those 3 spots you feel pretty good about, which really leaves 2 bench spots. And the Padres have a number of candidates, a lot of guys they've, signed to minor league deals, a couple other guys that they have coming back from last year's team. It really comes down to out of Jose Iglesias, Tyler Wade, Yuli Gurriel, Oscar Gonzalez has had a really good camp. Tirso Ornelas is in here too. What do you end up doing? The projection here is Jose Iglesias will win one of the spots just because his ability to bounce around the infield, play shortstop. That's something the Padres really need, as we've discussed, in case Xander Bogaerts struggles. The last bench spot's interesting because you can argue for the right-handed first base DH type, which the Padres don't have. That's where Yuli Gurriel comes into play. What's intrigued me is the Padres have been putting Tyler Wade in the outfield, and they don't have a backup center fielder. They don't have anyone on the roster really who can play center field, assuming Braden Lockridge isn't on the roster and he's not the strongest candidate. Tyler Wade was in center field against the Giants the other day and made a really nice catch going, back to the wall. That opened my eyebrows a little bit. I think they could go Yuli Gurriel, but I think what they should do is Tyler Wade, just given his ability to steal bases, left-handed bat off the bench, the fact he's shown he can play center, which is something the Padres don't have. To me, I think he makes the most sense as the final bench spot, and that's why he's here on this roster projection. How do you see the position player core shaking up and what the bench will look like in particular?
The bench is going to be interesting. I do believe Joe's going to be there. Your backup catcher. The Padres have had multiple catchers off the bench for some reason. So here's the thing. Jose, he's probably going to be on the team because I think he should have had a big league deal, but he didn't have a big league deal. Tyler Wade, you know what? He's probably earned a spot, so why not start off that way? He's got options. So if it doesn't work out,
no, Wade's actually doesn't have options. That's what's tricky here. So Wade and Eguy Rosario do not have options. So what this means is Eguy Rosario then would be open for any team to claim him on waivers. There's a chance the Padres will lose Rosario, and if they don't keep Wade, they also lose him. And that's the other aspect of this. Yuli Gurriel signed a minor league deal.
Yeah.
So realistically, there's not the same risk of losing Yuli Gurriel as there is losing Tyler Wade. And I think Wade provides more value personally.
Well, yeah, Wade does. I like him. I don't think he's going to be a starter. I think he's going to be a utility guy, his future and stuff like that. But, it's one of those things. You said Wade's played center field, this and that. I think actually center field is the easiest position to play in the outfield. But the bullpen, the bench part for the position guys is the interesting spot. You always have a catcher there, and then you got 2 bench guys. Where are you going to put them in? Where are you going to fill them in? When you need days off. Sheets can probably play first base, so Arise needs a day off for this and that. You need a third baseman. occasionally. You need shortstop occasionally. I feel like all those guys can kind of play second too. So it's an interesting spot. It's one of those things that honestly, I don't think the manager and GM know exactly what to do with the bench until opening day. I really feel like that's the hardest part about being a manager for opening day, because opening day everybody wants to be there. It's exciting, it's electric, but really the season's starting. It doesn't really matter if you're opening starter a week later or 5 days later, because you still got to win games. But the bench role is kind of the hard part, where every bench guy needs a role. You can't just say, okay, you're my DH, because now, and back in the day you could, but you can't do that anymore, where your DH needs to play a position. Your bench, 3 guys on the bench need to fill in. You need an outfield guy that can kind of move around from outfield to outfield. It's a blessing to have a guy that can play the outfield and infield. Then you need to have a guy that can play multiple infield positions besides first base. If you can play short, you can play second, and I do believe you can probably play third. It's all a little different, but
different footwork, different angles. But
those 3 positions take a skill. I feel like, the second baseman, if you put him at short, he's going to be shortstop, but he can hold his own. Same thing with third base. Third base probably can't really go to second. You're not going to see Machado at second base, but he could hold his own if you put him there. You first put a first baseman at second base, it's like, oh crap, what's going to happen? So I really think I like what you have here, but with the options, here's the other thing with the options. Let's just say they decide, I like Wade, but let's just say they decide not to go with Wade. And, here's the other teams. He has to make that decision. Hey, the Padres don't want me. I want to go somewhere else. Or he can say, hey, there's no other teams that want to claim me because everybody's filling up their roster spots. So it's not that easy.
I think he'd get claimed. He's a left-handed hitting infielder who can play short, can play second, showing can play the outfield. I think that's really the issue here is if they have to DFA him, he's probably gone. And that's a valuable piece to lose.
That's just one of those things that you just have. Sometimes you lose a piece to, sometimes you take a step back to go 2 steps forward. You can't keep you can't have your cake and eat it too. So trust me, I like Wade, I wish we could keep him, but here's the thing. Is Wade better than anybody that we have right now, to take over?
Well, and again, I think that's really what it comes down to with this roster projection is, I talk about the Padres left-handed hitting first base options. You have Luis Arraez. You also have Jake Cronenworth who can play first. Gavin Sheets, his best defensive position is first base. He has played left and right. That's not where he's best. Defensive metrics say he's okay out there. The eye test says much less so. There's definitely some liabilities there. So, but the thing is, if you want a right-handed hitting first base option, you have Connor Joe who can play left, can play first, can bounce around, play a little right if you even need. So I think for me, this is where you get the best possible version of the team in terms of having someone who can play center field. Again, Braden Lockridge is the other option, but he has 3 options left. It's better to put him in AAA to start and just have Tyler Wade, keep him on the roster. And you mentioned losing guys, in terms of making your choices and potentially losing guys. Eguy Rosario is the player who doesn't have any options left. And if he doesn't make this team, he does have to be DFA'd. And there's a chance you lose him. I think ultimately looking at the fact that Yuli Gurriel is on a minor league deal, Oscar Gonzalez is on a minor league deal, you look at, okay, who do we stand to lose? Who do the Padres stand to lose? And what's the relative value they provide? I do see Eguy Rosario as the odd man out in terms of guys who, are on a big league roster. And then with Wade, again, I think if he had not shown the ability to make some plays in center field, it'd be a different discussion. But I think adding that piece, it has been really, really helpful. Because again, you mentioned you feel like, playing center field is the easiest position, but Jason Heyward can't really do it anymore. Fernando Tatis Jr., you want to keep him out of center, just given all his injuries. And that's really it. You still want to have options in case Jackson Merrill, needs a day off or he turns an ankle and just needs a day to rest. I mean, just having that option. I think Tyler Wade is the guy right now, just having shown he can play center. That's why, to me, he takes this last roster spot over Yuli Gurriel or on any of the other options.
Oh, hey, I agree with you 100%, but I'm just saying, if it makes sense, usually teams don't do it. So it's one of those things that I don't really think. I mean, I like this bench, but I don't know I don't think it's going to be made until, the 12th hour of what, Thursday or something, or Wednesday night, whenever the
No
due
question.
date is to actual do it. So of next week. So I really feel like it's going to come down to the last couple games and figuring out what they want. Cause this is how I look at the bench. Okay. You have a catcher that's taking over your other catcher that needs a day off. Then you need an infield guy and you need an outfield guy.
Yep.
And then you have that guy that can do both.
Yep.
But then that's the thing is, and then if you have young guys that maybe don't get claimed or that have potential and have options, then you just sit them in AAA and you wait, and it kind of sucks. But that's there's just a plethora of guys. There's just so many guys there, so it's one of those. Like I said, it's the hardest decision. Even during when I was playing, we always didn't know who's going to be the bench guy. You always wanted that young talent like Wade to be there. But then again, here's the thing. Let's just say Xavier's, hurt. Where's Wade going to go? Is he going to fill in for shortstop? Probably not.
Iglesias would, and Wade
exactly.
would become your primary backup infielder.
So that's what you're taking as. So you have to understand, you got to look at that position, we all knew Joe was, an average outfielder, say, an average, above average outfielder to, above average first baseman. Can move around a little bit, but you kind of see him more of an outfielder than an infielder. So it's just kind of, like I said, there's all these different scenarios that if this guy happens, if that guy happens, we're not talking about days off because everybody wants to talk about days off because they'd be playing, but you have to look at the long scheme. Some guy gets hurt. If some guy gets hurt, you can always go for the AAA guy that's raking, bring him up, and you have your bench guy still platooning.
Yeah. I think the one question that needs to be answered and what could throw this into a little bit of a flux, if you will, is how much Jason Heyward still has left. And this is something that I think we need to talk about. Jason Heyward has been a tremendous, tremendous player throughout his career. His leadership is unparalleled. He has, shown fantastic defense at times. He had some great seasons earlier in his career. At this point, look, let's just, objectively, he was, let go by the Dodgers last year. He has still shown some power. He still has some leadership. He can do some things defensively, but he has really, really struggled to hit for a few years now. And this spring training, it's not just the numbers aren't good. He has not looked good. He's hitting $120.
His bats don't look good. It's not so much
right. How much do you put stock into a guy not looking good in spring training? I'm not talking about the statistical output. I'm talking about just watching him, the swing, the at bats. When a guy who's 35 and just does not look good in camp, do you just chalk it up to, it's still early, he's getting ready for the season? Or do you see it as a big red flag?
Well, see, in Jason Heyward's situation as a veteran guy, it's you and guys have to understand this. You can have a good at bat and strike out. Nobody thinks a strikeout's a good at bat, but the guy just felt good. The pitcher just, beat him.
He made his pitch. That happens. Yeah,
exactly. But the way Heyward's been looking, it's just kind of like you're hoping that, hey, it's spring training. I really feel like if he doesn't have it after the first month, they might platoon him. And then, maybe if he doesn't do well the first 2 months, they'll probably release him. That's my case. But the part is, he's still got some. We're hoping he's still got some gas left in the tank. Do we think he's going to be our everyday left fielder? No, I think they see him as a platooning.
No question.
Here and there, but the aspect is in spring training. I think as pitchers watching position players, you'd be worried about it. And since he's been in the big leagues for a long time and he's a veteran, you'd be like, it's okay, it's spring training. But if he looks this way in April, not saying he's hitting 160 or 120, if he's hitting 200 and still looks ugly or whatnot, you can't chalk it up. Well, he's hitting better than he was in spring. It just is a bats. Does his bats look good? We had Tony Clark back in the day that he had really good at bats and didn't have great numbers, but he was kind of our bench guy, our team leader. He was that guy to give Adrian Gonzalez days off that Adrian didn't take many days off. He only took maybe 5 to 10 a year, but he was that guy that did it. And he kind of did other things for us. When we went to the National League and we needed a DH. So it's just kind of what's going to happen. Maybe Connor Joe becomes the outfielder and Heyward becomes the DH, and then it kind of changes up. Or who knows? Maybe, sometimes guys don't like hitting just DH. They want to play a position and hit. So maybe that's going to work for Heyward.
Well, where I'm going with this is, has he looked bad enough that you DFA him before opening day? It's a 1-year, $1 million contract. And you say, you know what? Connor Joe is hitting well. And then we'd like to use this other bench spot for Eguy Gurriel. I don't think they will. Just get the fact they gave him a major league deal. But, look, we talked about this, that the Padres would have been better off taking the $3.5 million they gave to Elias Diaz and the $1 million plus to Jason Heyward and some others, and giving that to Austin Hayes, who, by the way, has looked great in camp for the Reds. I think realistically, the question is, when a guy looks this bad in spring training, do you just cut bait and say, you know what, we need to put the best team on the field? And I think, and again, I struggle with this because just having been a reporter, having talked to Jason Heyward many times over the years, seeing what he does in the clubhouse, I respect the hell out of Jason Heyward.
Oh, yeah.
He is a great player and a great human being. I take no pleasure in suggesting this. I again, just as a reporter, again, we're objective. We talk about things factually. But there's certain guys that, you can't help but respect, and he has everyone's utmost respect. But I think if you're the Padres and you are trying to compete for a playoff spot and your margin is already very, very thin, as we've talked about, I don't think that having Jason Heyward on the opening day roster is putting the strongest team on the field, just given where he is in his career. Again, I would love to be wrong. I think it would be, no one would be happier if Jason Heyward goes out and we make a bad spring training look like, why are we putting any stock in spring training? And he goes out and finds the fountain of youth and plays really well. Like, I would love for that to happen, just because he's an easy guy you want to see succeed. But given how everything has looked, I think there's a very valid argument to be made that the best team the Padres can put on the field on opening day does not include Jason Heyward. It has Connor Joe starting in left field, and then maybe a Eguy Gurriel or an Oscar Gonzalez on the bench. I actually think Oscar Gonzalez has looked really, really good. I don't think they'll do it, but I don't know if putting the best 26 on the roster on opening day and having Jason Heyward as part of that, I don't know if that's compatible just with how bad he's looked at the plate.
Honestly, here's the thing. I'd love to see Jason Heyward do well. I'm rooting for him. I really am. But if I was a GM and making the decisions like you actually just saying, he wouldn't be on the team. I would cut him. I'd talk to him maybe the week of the season or the spring training this week. And I'd tell him, say, look, I know they signed you a 1-year deal, this and that. It's just not working out, but this is what I would love to do. I'd love for you to go to AAA for a couple of weeks. You start hitting. We'll put you in the 2-hole or 1-hole, wherever you feel most comfortable, to get as many bats as possible. And you start swinging the bat, we're going to bring you up. But the way his bats have looked right now, it just, if we were a 500 team, or like, hey, just making the playoffs would be great for us, I'd say, hey, let's put him on the team. You never know. He's got that veteran leadership help out. But look at our lineup. We got a lot of veteran lineup. I mean, a lot of veteran guys, a lot of guys that can lead this team. So do we need an extra veteran to help out? No, especially since he's not really doing well. It's not easy for me to say, because when I was an older guy, I didn't want to get released. I didn't want to stop playing ball. And I feel like he's in the same boat. And it's hard to hang him up. And you just want to go out on top and whatnot. But with Jason, like I said, I've been rooting for him. His swing, his bats don't really look that good. And I don't know if he's working on something and just trying to believe through the process and saying, hey, don't worry about it, it will happen, or if he's just lost it. It does happen to the best of us. So it's just one of those things. If I was as a fan, I want him to be there. I want him to help the team out. But if I was playing GM right now, I would definitely release him, try to talk to him. He'd probably say no, to go to AAA, get some at bats, show me that you're the guy that I really want this year. Maybe he helps out the team, maybe he doesn't, but I think we have better options because I think there's better options. I mean, if we're going to go out there, it's better to have a hole. It's better not to have a hole in the lineup, or at least a young guy that has potential of doing a little bit more than a bigger hole. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and again, we'll see. Again, final few days of spring training. Who knows? Maybe something clicks, and he, has a really good final couple days, and maybe that calms some of the concerns. But as of right now, this is our Padres 2025 opening day roster projection. We will see in 1 week's time whether this is what the Padres end up going with. Heath, I guess I'm gonna tease this. Next week, we are gonna do a full, in-depth Padres preview. But just to wrap up here, just first impressions, looking at this roster, how many wins does this team accumulate this year? And let's go ahead and say, let's assume Yu Darvish does come back into this rotation. So swap out, call it Kolek for Vazquez in the bullpen. Brian Hoeing will come back. So, but just looking at this is the base of this team, minus one or two guys. How many wins does this team accumulate this year?
Do I got to put a number on it? Can I put a gauge on it?
You can put a range.
I'm a range 85 to 91.
Okay.
That's kind of my
I'm in the 82 to 87 range. I think this is an 85 win team.
Gotcha. I feel like if things do well, we're in that 91 range, that 90 wins. If things don't do well, we're probably in the mid 80s, or if things go really south, we could be in the low 80s like you. But I see potential in a lot of guys that nobody sees a lot of potential in. Maybe just because that's the underdog story that I was part of. And I see certain guys, like Matsui coming back, he had control issues. He's going to come back and better because he's going to he now knows what to deal with. Maybe the strike zone's smaller here. Maybe the umpires liked him over there or something. I don't know.
It's a different ball. I mean, it's a different routine. It's a big adjustment coming over.
But it's a little different, but I think he understands and got it now. I feel like Jackson Merrill's, really excited to do well. I think Tatis is finally healthy and ready to go. Sheets is kind of like, hey, I got this. I feel like Xavier's like, this is my position. I'm not losing it to anybody. So I feel like there's certain things, Joe coming home to San Diego. There's all these different things, I just feel like, Nick is going to do really well. King and Cease are going to do great. Randy's going to feel a little bit better. Hart's got an opportunity to play in the big leagues, even though he really learned to pitch in Korea. Now he's got an opportunity here. So it's just it could be a great story. So, and then you got Yu Darvish, you got some other guys that are hurt. So it's just, there's so much potential, things doing really well here that I see the team doing better than people predict. So.
Yeah, hey, and we'll see. Again, that's why they play the games, and you can certainly see a couple different scenarios playing out. Heath, thank you so much for joining me.
I won't. If I have one last thing.
Yeah.
Don't you think we need an MVP season from somebody?
No question. As we talked about, this is a team that is very, very top heavy, does not have a lot of depth, which means the stars have to stay healthy and play like stars from start to finish. There's no question. We have seen Fernando Tatis Jr. and Manny Machado, when healthy and at their best, be top 3 MVP contenders in the National League. Both have finished up there. We definitely, the Padres, I shouldn't say we, the Padres definitely need at least one of them to perform at that level, preferably two. And I will say, I was going to get into this next week when we do our full preview. Talking about guys who haven't looked good in spring training, talking about guys who look great. Luis Arias looks like he's going to hit 360, 370. That's my bold prediction for this year is Luis Arias crosses the 350 mark and finishes top 10 in MVP voting like he did with the Marlins 2 years ago. His first full season back in San Diego. His first full season in San Diego, excuse me. Last year was a midseason acquisition, early season, but still middle of the season, adjusting on the fly, new clubhouse, new team, new surroundings. His thumb is finally healthy. He looks as good as he's ever looked this spring training, if he stays healthy, I really think we're looking at 365, 370, and I think he has a chance to rack up 240, 250 hits and maybe chase down Ichiro's hits record for a season, or at least approach George Sisler's previous record. He looks that good to me. So I think, look, there is a chance if everyone stays healthy, if Tatis and Machado and Arias are all healthy and at their best, the Padres could have 3 top 10, top 12 MVP finishers, but that's the best case scenario. So I think at the very least, they need one of those guys to perform to that level, preferably 2.
I feel like we need Machado or Tatis to have an MVP season for us to do really anything this year. We're going to be that team that's kind of like, are we there? Are we not there? Can we get streaky at the end? But I really feel like it would really be nice if we could have an MVP player on the team and us do really well. I feel like that will get us over the hump. So we kind of need Machado to stay healthy and do that and be that guy we expect him to be, or Tatis that we thought that could be that, both of them have shown a lot of potential, but just not done it for a whole season and stayed healthy. So I just feel like my gut says, and I was talking to my kid about this a couple nights ago, that I feel like one of them is going to be an MVP season, and the funny part, he threw up and goes, what if Jackson Merrill's the MVP of the league of our season? I'm like, well, he's kind of like a Tatis Jr., a couple of years ago, is exciting, happy.
Merrill was a top 10 MVP finisher a year ago. So I think.
But I really feel like Machado or Tatis, if they can have an MVP season and possibly be number 1 or number 2 in the voting, I'm not looking for a rise in the top 5 or the top 10, even like you're number 1 or number 2. It just went to the other guy because stupid reasons or something like that. I really feel like
the other guy, Shohei Ohtani, and the greatest player we've seen in 100 years.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. He won 15 games and hit 60 home runs and stole 60 bases or something like that and struck out 200 people. You can't win, but if he wasn't there, he would win. We need one of those seasons from one of our guys. And I really feel like Machado or Tatis have to be one of those 2 guys. It would be great if it was Jackson Merrill or Luis Arias. But we really need one of those 2 guys to kind of step up their game and be that guy, to be, the face of the San Diego Padres. I feel like Machado's been that guy, but really Jackson Merrill was that guy last year, and Tatis has been that guy, but nobody's really been that guy all year and says, hey, I'm going to take over. And that's, the future Hall of Famers. Those are the guys that we need to take over and be the MVP season for us to go win a championship this year.
Yeah, no, and again, we've seen, them have the ability to perform at that level. Manny Machado, of course, was the MVP runner-up to Paul Goldschmidt a few years ago. Fernando Tatis, when he has been healthy, which in fairness has not been very frequent, but when he has been healthy and able to put up, close to a full season, he's been there. He was 3rd in MVP voting back in 2021. That was only playing 130 games. He still got to 40 homers. So, yeah, there's no question. If everything goes according to plan, those guys can be in the MVP race. And if they are, the Padres will be better for it. Heath, good time as always. We are 1 week away from opening day. We will have lots more good stuff coming up next week. Full Major League preview, full San Diego Padres in-depth preview with some special guests. It's going to be a good time.
All right. Have fun. Let's go.
All right, everyone. That'll do it for another episode of Friar Territory here on the Foul Territory Network. Go ahead and give us a review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, whatever platform you're listening on. We'd love to hear from you. For Heath Bell, I'm Kyle Glaser. Thanks for watching and listening. See you soon.